Hi, this is Ben Heyerdahl from IBM. Welcome to this new webcast for Smarter Commerce. With me today we have Qubit, which is a partner of IBM, working together with us on Webshere Commerce and Smarter Commerce. They have a solution that integrates into our Webshere Commerce suite and are able to deliver customer solutions that optimizes your purchasing process. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Harry, which will go through the solution.
Thanks very much, Ben. Thank you for that introduction. My name's Harry Hurst. I'm Head of Partnerships here at Qubit. We're really excited to be working closely with IBM. And while we've been operating with Websphere clients over the past few years, it's a great opportunity to introduce Qubit and what we do across the business and the wider partner ecosystem. So, a little bit about Qubit. When we were set up about 5 years ago by 4 ex-Googlers, the goal was to make the use of the data that's available to today's businesses, in particular about driving action and revenues through the digital properties. At the centre of this data are visitors, customers, clients, and by understanding the needs of those individuals at various stages of their life cycle, we can provide relevant, engaging and compelling experiences. And of course, the data isn't just restricted to web traffic, just as commerce isn't. In fact, website behavior will impact $12 million according to, $12 trillion according to Deloitte. But a significant amount of this commerce is related to digital activity. So the more that we know about visitors, shopping and browsing behavior, the more that we can service and serve them when it comes to the point of purchase or lead submission or application, content engagement and so on. And for many years, businesses have been trying to learn more and more about their customers, both prospective and existing, and some have famously done a fantastic job in this case. The reality is, though, that the expectations of consumers have risen in many areas. The websites are a great example of this, and if you look even beyond the leading retailers and into everyday life, successful businesses are putting customer experience and customers at the centre of their proposition. Look at Facebook, constantly changing, testing, updating their interface. Uber is another great example of this. They make the experience both part of the customer and, they make the experience of both the customer and the driver a key part of the system's operation. And even Google's constant updates to their algorithm are designed to present the best possible results to the user as fast as possible. And so consumers are used to this, and that is their expectation, which everybody else must then live up to. At the other end of the scale, there have been loads of examples of advancements made in simple tools that even get the smallest organizations thinking about the customer. So starting from this sort of simple and open source analytics systems, some of these allow businesses to start the manage and measure cycle. The old phrase, you can't manage what you can't measure. Well, measurement becomes the first part of that. So you get a proliferation of point solutions for independent needs of a single person or maybe a team within an organization. And of course, these need to be installed, managed, and also are often done so by external parties in silos. And they're kept separate because they're for individual needs of that business. This scale progresses to the setup that we see in some of our clients, and on the right-hand side, in the more sophisticated businesses who would describe themselves as digital organizations. They've got specific teams to understand and optimize each aspect of the user's experience, from their very first touch points to the conversion, managing the order, and of course the retention and advocacy. And at this stage of sophistication, The requirements are for global strategy, enterprise platforms, and structured delivery across the various business and market delivery strategies that are in place. And now, taking a step into optimization and personalization, there is also an optimization maturity curve. And even some of the larger businesses are only just starting to move to delivering optimization across their sites. First movers in the space have tended to be in highly competitive markets. Retail and travel are two clear examples of that. But with industry moves, market momentum, and growing basic solutions, other industries are starting to catch. And certainly we're seeing financial services, telecoms, other service and lead generating businesses are all growing sectors, and they all have a requirement for establishing platforms and service solutions around this need to personalize or deliver an experience for a specific customer. So the process often starts with setting up data sets. Usually these are pretty siloed, so again, delivery for a particular person or team within an organization. And they move through site-wide testing, which takes the experience or the visitor's journey just so far. So we want to make an experience across a digital platform that is the best optimized for everybody. But then the next step beyond that is testing against specific target segments. So rather than just fixing the site for everybody, there are always going to be different requirements. And so as you get into testing against specific segments, you can then move further into validating other technologies and using solutions to actually test technology purchases which have been made, and all the way down to a final level of personalization. And here are some of the businesses that are on that journey with Qubit. We operate out of our offices in London, New York, and Paris, and of course service other markets in order to do so. So, underpinned by some technology which is market leading in data capture and processing, what Qubit's platform does is allows businesses to quickly move through the maturity curve and into the high value segmentation actions and strategies which are driving the highest levels of return. And we provide the ability to personalize the digital experience for our clients very quickly, very simply and scalably. And our operations start with the structuring of data with our clients to allow every application to run from a single first-party data model rather than a siloed approach of data collection into different capture points. And as a user browses the site, we identify them and store their on-site behavioral data in the visitor cloud. Now, this then becomes the platform from which we can deploy any or each of the other applications. And so that this cutting-edge setup allows the real-time processing and access via a set of APIs into this data. So that means that it allows us to instantly recognize a user on the site, review their visitor record, and serve them the best possible experience, all in real time. And this really is cutting-edge technology, having so much data available at instant access. And so we sit as a technology on top of the CMS. So we work with, in many cases, Webshere, for example, to deliver these personalizations on top of a stable underlying platform. And it's all driven through JavaScript. And because of the way that we structure the data collection, there's no scraping of data, which is writing pieces of code to find a value in the page and pull that. And what this means is that it delivers accurate and consistent data sets which drive confidence when you move into consulting on top of those figures. And actually, the reasons why that pays off is because if you try to identify a value within a page based on some JavaScript logic, oftentimes, if a change is made to that page, it knocks everything out of alignment, and so you can start to lose that data, or the data is not loaded in time for that to be captured. By structuring this within the JavaScript value, it allows us to pick that up consistently. So our applications are delivered on top of this visitor set, of this visitor cloud. So each visitor that comes to the site, we have a record of their journey. We have a record of how they've reached the site, the pages and content, products that they've looked at, what they've purchased, what they've put in their shopping cart or basket, where they've abandoned, and in fact some of the reasons why. And some of this data that's being pulled in is actually based around individual users. So we can identify a block of data from a CRM platform and actually pull that into our data set as well. And this means that we can, for example, see a high value offline loyalty customer, so gold tier customer offline, when they reach the site and they log in or identify themselves in some way, we can see that they're high value, even if this is only their first time visiting that site. So we can treat them in a different way. So this is all extending the capabilities of those existing underlying stable platforms to extend the life cycle of those, and ensure that the clients or the retailers, travel companies, for example, are getting the functionality that they need on an ongoing basis, and don't see the need to then look around for other systems to use. So our applications, what are they and what do they do? Well, we can look at this in two aspects. Discover and Decipher are two of our interfaces for analysis and segmentation, and we can use this to visualize, to extract, add to, customize, or create segments within these specific interfaces. And in fact, another data collection point which we have is an exit survey. So we ask a visitor on departure of a site the reasons that they're leaving, and by consolidating this data into categories and into sentiment, we can start to understand some of the reasons for the behaviours that we're seeing on the site. And so we can start to diagnose the issues or opportunities within that site itself. So we're generating a hypothesis which we can then move into the next phase, which we testing. And this data that we have and that we're visualizing here within Decipher and Discover can be exposed via APIs into other BI platforms, or they can be rendered in our own embedded views. And then with this data, the idea is that there's intrinsic value there, but that value is magnified if we can drive some kind of action against it, and that's where we move into the Deliver platform. And Deliver is the tool to create the variations on the site. So either through a web-based editing interface where we can add in elements into the page, we can edit text on the page, we can add images, we can create overlays, light boxes, slide out widgets, and tailor each of those according to specific segments and target those segments. But we can also do this purely with JavaScript, and often the more sophisticated tests that are built are done so within an advanced JavaScript mode. But still, the targeting of a user based on not just what they've done during this particular session, but all of their previous history is still available to us. So an example would be if a visitor has bought from us 5 times, but we haven't seen them in the last 3 months, that might be an interesting segment that we want to then reactivate and bring back into our customer and consumer flow. So also built into the Deliver platform are a number of templates that we use, and this is really for clients who want to get started quickly, use some best practice before even diving into some more of the data and hypothesis-based testing. And this is for abandonment prevention and so on, even so far as persuasive design, where, for example, we identify that there are only a certain number of items left in stock, and we can flag that up to the user on the site. Alternatively, we look for a segment that we know is in the process of leaving or that is prone to departure, and we can fire an offer to them at the relevant time based on their behaviour on site. And so those are pre-built templates and can also be customised. And this is really an opportunity for additional consulting where the client isn't running it themselves to really come in and add value to that business and to that optimization process. And so we can then build triggered personalizations dependent on specific customer data points. So in this example, we're looking at visitors who are very loyal, and we want them to become advocates of the site. And so we can serve them something to ask them to refer a friend. On the flip side of that, if we think that a visitor group or a specific visitor is likely to depart the site, what can we do to either engage them during this session or bring them back to the site and create that flow towards the sale very, very quickly on from that point. A simple example of this in the real world was something that we did with Burton Menswear, where we looked at the geolocation of a user. We did a lookup against the weather at that geolocation, and we suggested an overcoat that was relevant to that specific weather at that location, and it drove a great number of conversions, an uplift of 11.6%. Now, that kind of personalization is really targeting the entire group of the visitors on the site, but we're doing so based on a number of really personal factors. Alternatively, a test might be specific to a group of users that nobody else sees. And of course, that uplift is something that we want to continue to measure. And actually, this is something that needs to be really rigorously looked at. And one of the key points that we find with our clients is that they really trust the figures that are being delivered by our platform because of the way that we set up our statistics. And for anybody who's interested in looking at this in some more detail, there's a link on the site at the moment that you can go to and download our white paper. It talks about the different ways of testing and some of the pros and cons of those approaches. But it really comes home when you read the quote from Rich Wilson here, where he said that the uplifts that we show within our piece of technology can be seen in the bottom line. And that's absolutely vital. And that comes down to the validation, the data collection, and the accuracy with which we can measure the incremental improvements that we're making to the site. And this area about measuring uplift and delivering ROI also comes into how fast these tests and these improvements can be made. Great quote from Jonathan Wall from Shop Direct. We're running over 500 tests per year, and that testing velocity is a great way to really drive a very fast return on investment. In some cases, those tests will be successful based on the hypothesis that's being put forward. Sometimes they're deemed to be inconclusive, but we can statistically see that they're inconclusive. And a lot of times, a test might fail. But if we know that that's a failure, we can then move on and try something else and try to drive those improvements. And so the velocity of testing based on a single implementation can be very, very fast indeed. So another couple of examples of where this is being used. This one is from Scott Dunn, and this was about improving the navigation of the site without fundamentally restructuring the site itself. And so we implemented a drop-down navigation style, which we served entirely through the digital platform. And so, an incredibly powerful use of the JavaScript technology which we have in place. And as a final example, this is one from Topshop, which we ran across mobile sites. And of course, we're running across desktop, mobile, tablet. And this is specifically served towards the first-time visitors on the Topshop mobile site to help them with that process. And so, what we wanted to do is improve the experience and do so by reducing confusion and helping that visitor through to the next stage. So again, being quite specific about the group of users that are seeing this, it would become maybe an obstacle if you were to see this every single time you went back to the site. So, where does this value extend out to other businesses? Well, certainly the Qubit platform will extend the functionality of existing digital platforms, so lengthen existing relationships that are in place, by driving increased value and ROI across the entire process of owning and running a transactional website or other revenue driving websites. What we're doing is actually starting to create a link now between some of the data that's been collected and the investment that's gone into that, and actually driving activation. And so that link is incredibly important. Again, we go back to the velocity of change that can go through. And finally, it actually grows the consulting and service opportunities through ongoing engagements with clients, moving businesses away from just project-based work. There's an opportunity to build services and opportunities over the life cycle of working with the Qubit platform. Of course, to find out more, I'd be very happy to answer any questions. So anything that doesn't get covered off on this call, we can handle separately. So please do feel free to contact me, and certainly visit our website, have a look at the partner page, and have a look at the client page as well. There are some really great case studies and examples in there, and don't miss the video case studies in particular. So just to finish off, thanks very much for taking the time to listen to this today. I hope to hear from you on this call, and if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch. So thanks very much, Ben.
Thank you, Ari. Thanks for a great overview. During the webinar, we got some questions from the audience, and I'll go through each of them now. Hopefully we can get through most of them. One is, which industries does Qubit work across?
Okay, so I think that probably the largest customer set that we have is in retail, and we've certainly done a lot in fashion retail over the last 5 years or so that we've been in business. Travel is another sector that, you know, it's often one to follow retail in that early stage of adopting phase. That being said, I think there are still some major players in both of those industries that haven't yet taken a significant step into truly understanding the visitor and building their experience around that one central point. But yeah, this really is a growth area. I think awareness has grown through the market over the last few years, and so we're seeing more in finance, publishing, gambling, lead generation. Every industry is really cottoning onto the fact that this is a great opportunity to make the most value from the traffic, which everybody works so hard to get to their sites. Once they're there, now how do we get the most out of it? How do we convert them? How do we engage them and make sure they become loyal customers and come back time and time again?
Okay, thank you. I'll jump to the next one. How does Qubit impact on replatforming projects?
Yeah, so replatforming is a really interesting question, because what we've seen over the last few years is that retailers in particular are are looking at replatforming every sort of 3 years or so. So about a third of the market is in some kind of either consideration or execution phase in replatforming. What we found that we've been able to do is, in some cases, actually delay that replatforming by extending an existing platform's features and functionality, so that retailer, that business, doesn't need to then go outside and look for another platform to use or to work with. In other instances, actually having this depth of data has been vital for those clients doing the replatforming, because it then helps to inform what that next stage looks like, and so certainly having the visitor data cloud and access to that data set can inform the decisions that are made in the subsequent replatforming projects.
There are other testing providers out there in the market. How does Qubit differ?
Very true. And certainly some of the sort of A/B testing providers, which have been growing over the last few years, have risen at awareness in the market, and we're seeing a lot of clients who have sort of dipped their toe in testing, starting to see the value of this idea that they can make changes and optimizations to the site on an ongoing basis, and so they're, I guess, evolving into Qubit customers, and they're going through that maturity curve that I showed earlier on, where testing is site-wide, it's pretty broad, but actually once you move out of that scope and that field of vision, you can then move into something which is much more targeted, much more impactful, and actually much more sustainable, because through a platform like Qubit, you've got an ongoing delivery mechanism. But I think one of the really, really key things to think about here is that even if we're just talking about testing, and some of our clients, and certainly through their life cycle, start with a testing process, we want to do that based not just on the visitor's session, what they're doing right now, but often it's what have they done before, how have they interacted with us, how have they interact with the brand, have they bought before, and so that's where the Qubit Visitor Cloud is really informing and really driving the targeting and accuracy of these tests, and so delivering considerably higher results off the back of it. So that data store is absolutely key, and certainly none of the testing providers in the market will offer that.
And I got a couple more questions here. Can Qubit take in data from CRM systems?
Yeah, so CRMs, absolutely. We've got a couple of great examples. So usually, and I talked about the data structuring that Qubit does, and at an early stage through implementation, what we do is we create a user data block on each page, and that can be populated either by the browser, so it tells us that this is a new user or this is a returning user. But in many cases, what we're doing is actually feeding data back in from the e-commerce platform, the CRM. So that's where I was talking earlier on about loyalty customers, are high value customers that we know are high value because they're exposed as that in the CRM, and we can draw that information back into the site, which Qubit can then read and then serve a relevant experience against that. So yes, absolutely, we bring in CRM data, and we've also got examples of adding data into our database to recognise visitors based on what they've done offline. So that's data ingestion piece as well. So yes, it's a vital part of what we do.
Okay. Thanks. I got a few more things there. So, in terms of a channel, given that IBM is also working heavily through the channel, in terms for a partner to engage with you or start working with you on these projects, how does that work?
Well, there are a few opportunities there. I think depending on the partner and the requirements there there's, I guess, two key opportunities that I see. On one side, there is the implementation work. We do try to keep implementation as light as possible for our clients, and so it certainly won't be a long drawn out project piece. But there is certainly some work to be done there, indeed at an early stage. However, where I think the real opportunity here is for those businesses who are interested in having an ongoing revenue stream in this area and delivering and developing a conversion team or an analytics team, or some kind of service or solution which stays with the client, and stays with a site build over a longer period of time. Qubit are very happy to provide the technology to the client, and then we work with partners, and this already exists, where we work with partners to then deliver the solution or the services on top of that technology platform. So if anybody on this call is interested in understanding more about that or working with us in that way, then please do feel free to get in touch.
Okay, thank you, Harry. And thanks everyone for participating today and this evening. And if you're interested to see further on this, please reach out to your IBM contact person, your IBM channel, or also Qubit directly. Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks, Harry, for presenting your solution, and everyone have a nice day and evening. Thank you.